The night was calm and the city lights made a soft glow in the distance. Maria walked slowly through the underground parking lot after finishing her shift. She wore her plain blue uniform, carried a small bag, and hummed a quiet tune to herself. For months she had followed this same routine. Every night after cleaning the tall glass offices upstairs, she took this same path to reach her old car parked in the corner. She liked her job even though most people didn't notice her. She swept the floors, emptied trash cans, and wiped down desks without expecting a single thank you. It didn't matter to her. She was quiet by nature and preferred peace. But that night something felt different. There were fewer cars than usual, and the air in the parking lot was still and heavy. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. She pulled her jacket closer around her shoulders and kept walking. At the other end of the lot, Robert Harlan pressed a button on his car keys. His expensive black sports car beeped softly as the lights blinked. Robert was a man who liked to show his power. He had made his fortune in real estate and loved reminding people of it. The expensive watch on his wrist, the tailored suit, and the shiny car were his favorite ways to show that he was somebody important. He had just finished a long meeting that didn't go the way he wanted. His business deal had slipped through his fingers and he was angry. He walked toward his car with fast, heavy steps. In his mind, everyone else was to blame for his problems. He hated being challenged and hated losing control. So when he saw Maria walking near his car, his anger quickly turned into sharp suspicion. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was simply walking toward her car holding her bag. But to him, in that moment of frustration, it was enough to set him off. "Hey!" His loud voice echoed through the parking lot. Maria stopped walking, startled. She turned around, unsure if he was talking to her. Robert narrowed his eyes. He didn't care who she was. He only saw someone near his car, and that was enough. Maria raised her hands slightly and spoke softly. "I'm just passing through. My car is right there." But Robert wasn't listening. His face was red from the stress of the day. The sound of his expensive shoes hitting the floor was sharp as he moved closer to her. Maria's heart started to beat faster. She wasn't afraid, but she could see how angry he was. She had seen that look before in her past life, a past most people didn't know about. Years ago, Maria had served in the military. She had worn a uniform with honor, trained for years to stay calm in high-pressure situations. She knew how to stand her ground and how to control her breathing. After leaving the service, she wanted a quiet life. That was why she worked as a janitor now. She liked things simple. She didn't tell anyone about her past because she didn't need to. But deep inside, that strength was still there. Robert moved even closer, his voice growing louder. He accused her of getting too close to his car, of doing something she hadn't done. His words were fast and unfair, but Maria stayed calm. She didn't shout back. She kept her voice soft and respectful. She didn't want trouble. She only wanted to go home, drink a warm cup of tea, and sleep before the next day. But Robert didn't stop. He pointed toward his car, talking as if she was guilty of something. His frustration was not truly about her. It was about the deal he had lost. It was about his need to feel powerful. In that empty parking lot, Maria became the easy target for his anger. Maria took a small step back. She tried to keep a safe distance between them, but he followed. His shadow stretched long under the bright white lights. The tension filled the space like thick smoke. Maria thought about walking away, but she also knew she couldn't turn her back on someone that angry. She had learned long ago to face situations carefully, not fearfully. She kept her posture steady, her hands still at her sides. Robert moved close enough that she could smell the strong scent of his expensive cologne. His voice grew harsher. He leaned forward, pointing a finger at her as if he had the right to control her. At that moment, Maria's mind became quiet inside. It was the same quiet she felt during her training years ago. She didn't need to fight. She didn't need to raise her voice. All she needed was control. Control of her breathing, control of her space, control of herself. A car passed above the parking lot, and the faint rumble of its tires was the only sound for a moment. Maria slowly lowered her eyes to the ground and then back up to his face, steady and calm. Robert didn't notice the strength behind her silence. He thought she was weak. He thought she was just another janitor he could talk down to. He didn't know anything about the woman in front of him. He didn't know she had once led a team during a dangerous mission overseas. He didn't know she had faced real fear and real danger in places far away from this quiet city. He didn't know she had trained for years to stay calm when everyone else panicked. In his world of suits and business deals, he thought power came from money. In her world of discipline and quiet strength, she knew real power came from the heart. Maria stood there, breathing slowly, her shoulders straight, her eyes steady. She didn't raise her hands, she didn't shout, and she didn't run. She simply faced him, the way a strong person faces a storm. The parking lot was quiet again, but the air was tense. Neither of them moved for a few seconds. The story between a tired janitor and an angry millionaire had just begun. Neither of them knew how this night would change both of their lives, but Maria was ready for whatever came next. She had faced storms before. She could face this too. The parking lot lights were bright, making every shadow sharp and clear. Maria stood still, watching Robert's face as he came closer. He was breathing heavily, his voice growing louder as if making noise would give him more power. Maria had met people like this before. People who thought the world belonged to them. People who looked down on others. But she had never let that kind of person decide who she was. Robert kept talking, his words fast and heated. He pointed to his car and told her she had no right to be near it. Maria tried to explain again, softly and clearly, that she was only walking to her own car, but he didn't care. His frustration had nothing to do with her. In his mind, yelling at someone made him feel strong. Then, without warning, he reached out toward her shoulder. His fingers brushed her uniform as if he was trying to block her path. It was a sudden move, and Maria's heart started beating faster. She had been trained long ago to notice everything. The way someone moved, the angle of their hands, how close their feet were. She didn't panic. She simply took a small step back, keeping her eyes on him. Robert didn't like that. His voice rose again, echoing off the concrete walls. He stepped forward, faster this time, as if trying to prove something. Maria could see it clearly now. This was not just about his car. This was about control. He wanted her to be afraid, to back down, but she didn't. She had learned long ago that silence can be stronger than shouting. For a brief second, Maria thought of her days in training. She remembered the long nights, the cold ground, and the instructors teaching her how to control her fear. They had taught her that panic makes people weak, but calm makes people powerful. That memory settled inside her like a steady heartbeat. She stood firm. Robert reached out again, but this time Maria moved. It wasn't a big or loud move. It was smooth and fast, like water slipping through fingers. She stepped to the side, gently turned her body, and used his own forward motion to unbalance him. He stumbled for a second, surprised. He had not expected this quiet janitor to react like that. Maria didn't want to hurt anyone. That was not who she was, but she knew how to protect herself. She lifted her hands, palms open, and said softly, "Please step back. I'm not here to cause trouble." Robert was too embarrassed to listen. He had never liked being challenged, and now, in this empty parking lot, a woman in a janitor's uniform had just made him look foolish. His pride burned hotter than his anger. He stepped forward again, more recklessly this time. But Maria's eyes were calm. She saw his movements like a map she had already studied. In one smooth turn, she redirected his arm and guided him downward. It wasn't a fight. It was control. He'd lost balance again and nearly fell to one knee. The sound of his expensive watch scraping the floor echoed. For the first time, his confidence cracked. He looked up at her, shocked. Robert's voice trembled now, not from fear but from disbelief. What did you just do?" he stammered. Maria didn't answer. She didn't need to. She simply stood where she was, breathing evenly, her shoulders straight, her hands still open and calm. The silence in the parking lot grew heavier. A security camera blinked quietly in the corner, recording everything. A guard sitting at the desk upstairs noticed the unusual movement on the screen. He leaned forward, frowning. He had seen this janitor many times before, always quiet, always polite. He had never seen her like this. He picked up the phone and called for support, just in case something was happening. Robert, still trying to recover from the moment, stood up and brushed off his jacket. His pride hurt more than his body. He shouted at her again, calling her disrespectful. Maria didn't answer. She only said, "Please stop. This isn't going to help you," but Robert didn't stop. He tried to grab her arm again, and once more she moved like someone who had trained for years. This time, she shifted his wrist gently but firmly and turned his body just enough to make him lose balance completely. He ended up on the ground, sitting awkwardly with his back against the pillar. His fancy suit was wrinkled and his confidence was gone. For a moment, he just sat there, breathing hard. He looked at her with a mix of anger and confusion. He had thought she was just a janitor. He had thought she was weak. But now he wasn't sure who she was anymore. Maria stepped back a few paces, keeping a respectful distance. She didn't want to humiliate him. She only wanted to protect herself. She didn't like hurting people. That wasn't in her nature. Then came the sound of footsteps. A security guard hurried into the parking lot. He was a middle-aged man who had worked in the building for years. His eyes widened when he saw Robert on the ground and Maria standing calmly a few feet away. "What's going on here?" he asked carefully. Robert quickly tried to stand up, brushing the dust off his clothes. He pointed at Maria, his voice sharp. "She attacked me," he shouted. But the guard had already seen enough on the camera feed upstairs. He knew what had really happened. He looked at Maria, then at Robert, and his face showed quiet doubt. "Sir," he said gently, "I saw what happened on the cameras." Robert froze. He had forgotten about the cameras. More security guards entered the parking lot along with 2 police officers who had been nearby. Maria stood silently as they approached. She wasn't worried. She had done nothing wrong. She kept her breathing steady and answered every question honestly. Her calm voice surprised even the officers. Robert tried to explain his side of the story, but the officers watched the security footage and saw everything. They saw how he had moved toward her, how she had stepped back, how he had tried to grab her, and how she had defended herself without ever striking him. The officers turned to Maria and asked her a few more questions. Then one of them nodded slowly. "You handled yourself well," he said in a respectful tone. "I see you've had some training." Maria hesitated for a moment, then quietly replied, "I served in the military, a long time ago." The officers exchanged quick glances, their respect for her growing silently. Robert, on the other hand, felt his pride shrinking. The situation was no longer in his control. The people around him weren't treating him like the powerful man he liked to be. They were listening to her. The parking lot that had felt like his stage a few minutes ago now felt like a spotlight on his mistake. And Maria, the quiet janitor, was no longer invisible. The officers took their statements carefully. The security guard backed up Maria's version. The footage supported her fully. For the first time that night, Robert had no words. The moment that was supposed to scare her had turned completely around. Maria stood near her car, still calm, still steady. She didn't celebrate or smile. She didn't need to. She just felt a quiet strength inside her. The same strength she had carried all those years without showing it. The night had changed. The silence of the parking lot no longer felt heavy. It felt clear. The night grew colder as the police cars slowly drove away. The sound of their engines echoed through the empty parking lot. Maria stood by her car, holding her small bag tightly against her chest. She was tired but not shaken. Her heart was calm, her breathing steady. She had faced much worse in her past, and tonight was just another reminder that strength did not always need to be loud. Robert remained standing near the pillar where he had fallen earlier. His expensive suit was still wrinkled, and his face no longer carried the proud, sharp look it had before. His eyes were restless, moving from the security guards to the officers, then back to Maria. He looked like a man who had lost something, not money, but control. The arrogance that had filled his voice earlier had disappeared. One of the police officers had told him clearly what would happen next. The security footage had made everything plain. His actions were on record. He had no way to twist the story. The officer had also informed him about possible legal consequences. Robert had been silent the whole time. For a man who liked to talk over everyone, his silence now spoke louder than any words could. Maria didn't stay to hear what happened next. She didn't want to. She simply nodded politely to the security guard, got into her old car, and drove away. The city lights were still glowing as she entered the quiet road leading home. Her hands were steady on the steering wheel, but her mind was full of quiet thoughts. She never wanted trouble. She never wanted attention. She had built a life of peace after years of service. But life had its way of testing people at unexpected times. The next morning, she returned to work as usual. She wore the same simple uniform, carried the same bag, and walked through the glass doors like she always did. But something was different. People in the hallway were whispering softly to each other. A few glanced at her with curious eyes. Some of the workers who had never said hello before suddenly gave small nods as she passed. Maria kept walking, pretending not to notice. She didn't enjoy being the center of attention. By noon, news of the parking lot incident had spread through the building. Someone had leaked the security camera footage to the company's legal team, and a few details had made their way to other employees. People who once thought of her as just a janitor now saw her differently. They didn't know all the details of her past, but they knew she had defended herself with quiet strength. Later that day, Maria received a call to meet with the building manager. She entered the office with quiet steps, unsure what to expect. The manager, a kind but serious man in his 50s, looked at her with a mix of concern and respect. He asked her to sit down and explained that the company was taking the incident seriously. Robert, the man who had shouted at her and lost his temper, was well known. But he was not above the law. The company's legal team had already started reviewing everything. There were witnesses, security footage, and official reports. Maria had done nothing wrong, and the manager told her that clearly. He also thanked her for staying calm during the situation. Maria nodded and replied softly, "I just did what I had to do." The manager leaned forward. "You did more than that," he said. "You showed strength when most people would have broken down. That takes courage." For a moment, Maria felt a warmth inside her chest. She wasn't used to praise. She wasn't someone who showed off or liked being in the spotlight. All she had ever wanted was to work quietly and live in peace. Over the next few days, Robert's name appeared less and less around the building. He stopped showing up to meetings. Word slowly spread that the company had taken action. Legal charges were filed, and his public image took a heavy hit. He tried to fix the situation with statements and explanations, but the footage told the real story. Robert had always been seen as powerful. But now people saw the other side of him, the side he had tried to hide. The respect he once commanded in the office began to fade. People were no longer afraid of him. Some even felt relieved that his behavior had finally caught up with him. Maria, on the other hand, didn't change her routine. She kept sweeping the floors, emptying trash cans, and greeting the night guard on her way in and out. But quietly, everything around her was different. The security guards began treating her with a little more respect. Some employees smiled more warmly when they saw her, and even though she never asked for it, her quiet courage had earned her a kind of silent honor. One evening, as she was about to leave for the night, the same security guard who had first arrived during the incident walked up to her. He smiled and handed her a small envelope. "The team wanted to say thank you," he said. "You showed us what real strength looks like." Inside the envelope was a handwritten card signed by several staff members. The words were simple but heartfelt. They thanked her for standing strong, for showing that being quiet doesn't mean being weak, and for reminding them that everyone has a story behind their uniform. Maria held the card gently in her hands. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She wasn't used to people noticing her. But this time, their kindness felt genuine. She walked out into the same parking lot where everything had happened. The lights above were still bright. The same old car waited in the corner, and the night air was cool. But this time, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a deep sense of pride. She looked around and took a slow breath. The parking lot was quiet but not heavy. It felt safe again. She knew that life would go back to normal soon, and that suited her just fine. She wasn't chasing fame or recognition. She only wanted to live her life with dignity. What happened that night would be remembered by others as a shocking incident with a millionaire. But for Maria, it was something simpler. It was proof that she still carried her strength, the strength she had earned long ago in her military days. She didn't need medals or applause. Her calm heart and steady hands were enough. As she got into her car, she saw the security guard wave at her from the gate. She waved back with a small smile. The world had seen her differently for a moment, but to her, she was still the same person. The engine started, and the car rolled out into the night. Behind her, the building lights glowed softly. Ahead of her, the road was open and quiet. Maria drove with peace in her heart. She had not chosen the fight, but she had faced it with courage. And that was something no one could ever take away from her.